Cao Dong is in his 30s. He'd been a prisoner in northern China, and he gave a very nervous, understandably, very nervous report of what he had seen in that prison. I asked him whether he was aware of the practice of what is known as organ harvesting, which is taking body parts from prisoners to order, in effect. This is a trade which is run by the People's Liberation Army for profit. And he could only tell me that he had a friend, another Falun Gong practitioner, in the prison in northwest China. The friend disappeared one day, and the next time he saw him was his body, the friend's body, in the prison hospital with holes where body parts had apparently been removed. After the meeting I had with these former prisoners, they were all arrested. Cao Dong was later convicted of meeting me, and he was sentenced to 5 years in prison, and he remains in prison now.
Em 2002, uma testemunha, um agente armado da polícia que trabalhava para o Serviço de Segurança Pública, participou em detenções ilegais e na tortura de seguidores do Falun Gong. Ele fez-nos um relato em primeira mão sobre uma seguidora do Falun Gong. Ele disse que após uma semana de tortura intensa e de ser forçada a ingerir comida, ela tinha feridas e cicatrizes em todo o corpo. Depois, enquanto estava completamente consciente, sem qualquer anestesia, abriram-lhe o peito com um bisturi. O sangue jorrou e ela gritou de dor a dizer: "O Falun Gong é fantástico." Depois disse: "Mataram-me a mim, um único indivíduo, não vão matar-nos a todos." Nesse momento o médico hesitou, mas continuou a cortar as veias. O coração foi retirado primeiro, depois foram os rins. Quando a tesoura cortou as veias do coração, ela começou a contorcer-se. Foi horrível. Parecia que algo estava a rasgar-se. Ela tinha a boca e os olhos completamente abertos. Não quero continuar.
What happens in China has ramifications elsewhere. As long as China becomes a cheap route for the wealthy in those countries to buzz off to China, get an organ from executed prisoners, why would those countries work to develop effective alternatives within those countries to address the needs of their people?
In no country that we know of, and in no country represented in the World Medical Association, in which there are 83 national medical associations from all over the globe, in no one it is allowed to sell and to purchase an organ for transplantation.
So the Organ Transplant Center, the Armed Police General Hospital in Beijing, our Organ Transplant Center is our main department for making money. So what you've got is now these army hospitals killing Falun Gong practitioners for their organs as a way of making money. There's a lot of trade with China. China has slave labor camps where about half of them are Falun Gong practitioners. Nobody can get in, nobody knows the exact numbers. There's this Laogai Foundation that makes estimates, but it's between 2 and 4 million people. And the people we talk to get out, you know, they say they're making these products which they see on Western shelves or components of them. And so China's underpricing the market. I mean, if you look at a lot of stuff you buy in stores, a lot of it just says made in China. It doesn't say made in China by slave labor, but that's likely to be the case.
And we've actually talked to people who've been in these camps, Falun Gong practitioners, and I'm going to talk to talk tomorrow about a young woman who worked 16 hours a day making products for export.
In the dispatching center, we were forced to wrap the chopsticks by using a piece of paper, and on it said the chopstick was sanitized, so rest assured to use it. And they were then distributed to the market, and people just use it, but it's very dirty, it's not clean at all. We're not allowed to wash our hands, and after we go to the restroom, we come back and continue wrapping the chopsticks.
The American market has been particularly interested in cheaper goods. That whole Walmart psychology of going for cheaper stuff has really provided a market for Chinese-made goods.
I remember that I was forced to to knit the sweaters, and all handmade. We were forced to knit, and we were told that they were all exported to European countries or America. So maybe some of the sweaters you wear is made by Falun Gong practitioners in the labor camp.
There have been governments and businesses and also the silence of the media who have all, in a sense, sold out their morality, essentially for certain kinds of gains, usually monetary gains. Some of it is political because China is involved in certain major decisions in regards to military operations around the world and that kind of thing, so they can exercise pressure.
More and more, what's called corporate responsibility is really just an excuse to build whatever the Chinese Communist Party wants to build at the time. And mostly, that is military technology or surveillance technology. In fact, that's the way these companies got ahead. That's why they're some of the only companies that are actually making a profit in China today, is because of what they've done. The fact is, people are being arrested every day in China. And after the Tiananmen Square massacre, Congress passed laws that were fairly explicit, saying you could not sell any surveillance equipment to the Chinese police. The message of that law is very clear. I think it's extremely important for American companies to back away from this kind of thing. Think of the strategy that the Chinese government is using here. They want the Chinese people to censor themselves. The surveillance is out there, but it's more than that. The government makes it obvious that the surveillance is out there. They've started to use these little cartoon figures which appear on your screen down south, which show a little policeman, a friendly little policeman, and a friendly little policewoman. And they're on your screen all the time to let you know you're being watched. You know, maybe you should watch what you're doing. Maybe you should watch what you're saying.
Neste momento levanta-se a pergunta: por que é que a imprensa não divulgou isto? Não é por acaso.
News organizations have either current or hoped for business interests in China, and it's well known that the regime will tell people in the context of business that if you do things that we're not pleased with, we can prevent you from doing business here.
Papers like the Times and the Wall Street Journal and the Los Angeles Times, if I'm not mistaken, have not been covering this issue. And perhaps it relates to the fact that your government is, dare I say, almost owned by the government of China in terms of the number of treasury bills and so on, more than 2 trillion.
You've always wanted to avoid the problems that occurred during the last century with the rise of Japan and Germany. And so what we have tried to do is to engage the Chinese, to integrate them into the international system. And because of that, we've become very indulgent. And essentially, when the Chinese have done bad things, we've treated them well. And so they continue being bad, we continue to treat them well. They are much more dependent on us than we are on them. Last year, about 140% of China's overall trade surplus related to sales to the United States. That's an incredible number. They've been running deficits with the rest of the world to run a surplus against us. So, of course, we see the Chinese as 10 feet tall, that they own us. They don't. They have to buy U.S. Treasury obligations because their economy is so dependent on the U.S. market. They have no choice.
Basically, they're trying to corrupt foreign democratic values and impose their own Chinese repressive values. And in some places, they get away with it. They use these Confucius institutes as a form of pressure. They shut down the Shenyang performing arts wherever they go. There was actually a lawsuit in Israel where Tel Aviv University shut down an art exhibit of Chinese art on the request of the Chinese embassy because there was a Confucius Institute there, and then there was a lawsuit about it.
Ever since, the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre where they killed many unarmed students, they've been trying to control the media because that exploded around the world, that incident. The local consulates and embassies have a very strong presence, and they have a lot of connections. They give a lot of rewards and trade-offs to people, and they're involved with Chinese language media outside of China as well. Those people who run those media outlets know what they are not supposed to talk about, and they know that if they talk about those certain things, Uncle so-and-so or whoever back in China could be persecuted in various ways if their news organization reports on things that the Chinese regime does not want them to report on. That's mafia tactics. It's reprehensible, disgusting behavior, but that's the normal way that they operate.